welcome my Wrecker Romps to a analysis video of this Commoner game that I played against my boy Tom not too long ago. And I saw Tom absolutely tearing it up with this Kassai deck, and Kassai definitely does seem to be one of the stronger heroes in Commoner, so I wanted to go ahead and get this game recorded so that we can dive in to what it's like to play the Commoner Levia deck, the whole Talishar deck I just put out. This is pretty interesting. It's not a deck that does anything too fancy. It doesn't have Blood Rush to go over the top on these nuts tall and wide turns, but it has a lot of these combos that you're playing towards that really make the deck feel like it's got legs in Commoner. I don't know enough about the format for me to really say if it's like up to par with the best decks, but I would consider Kassai probably one of the best decks, so we're going to go ahead and see how this game plays out. Now, this isn't necessarily just commentary here. I want to kind of analyze mistakes that are being made as well. And actually, we see one coming up, I think, pretty immediately. And this is something that I should know well enough in Levia. I do this all the time. If my opponent is going to attack me on turn 1, my turn 0, you should just block with your whole hand. Like, just do it. Get that graveyard in a spot where you don't have to worry about it anymore. I think in this case in particular, I probably could have held the Razor Reflex, but go ahead, block with that, lead the charge, just so that I could potentially lead in with a Banish 3 attacker right from the get-go. And we do see that I get punished for that choice of not blocking with 3 cards, because now I've drawn up and I have a Dread Screamer, and I've got that Ghostly in Arsenal, or not in Arsenal, in Graveyard. And in theory, that should be a great combo to now just swing in for 10, but I don't actually have 3 cards in Graveyard. So instead, I'm forced down a line where if I want to present decent damage at all, I'm going to play out the Come to Fight. Come to Fight at least is going to go straight to the graveyard, which now lets me play the Dread Screamer in for 9. And that's a decent chunk of change, right? For sure. But now my pitch curve has been all messed up. I'm going to have none floating. If I want to swing in with that Ghostly Visit, now I would have to pitch the Razor Reflex. And sure, it would be a 13 damage turn. And that's a pretty great turn too, but I'm risking the Arsenal, or risk, not having an Arsenal. And Razor Reflex is like the perfect card for Arsenal. So even though 4 damage is pretty juicy, the Razor Reflex is potentially going to enable a really wide turn, and that's worth more than the 4 damage right now to me. So I'm going to go ahead and just let that Dread Screamer be the play, and move to Arsenal the Razor Reflex. And with Ghostly Visit now in Graveyard, or now in Banish, that is a combo that's already presenting itself in that, if Tom doesn't want to overblock my Ghostly, I could Razor it to start a wide turn, and that's pretty cheeky because in Commoner, like, sure, you could just overblock the Ghostly, deny my value, try to draw out the game against Levia, but I don't really know how anyone plays this format yet in terms of like how highly they value their cards. I know when I put this list together, it almost hurts to block with cards sometimes because these cards are not necessarily that good, and there's only 2-ofs in your deck. So when you're forced, oh, geez, well, I can play safe, overblock to deny this. Well, you just got rid of, very precious 2-ofs in a format where a lot of your cards feel like filler to a degree. So we've got Tom now returning. He is actually taking a big turn here because he set up that Quicken on turn 1. He's popping Gallantry Gold to go for a big turn. And Gallantry Gold is really, it's a good card, but it's not that scary because there's really no payoff on Kassai's end for actually hitting and getting copper tokens anymore, in Commoner at least. Like Gallantry Gold is going to make it so that, sure, if I block with an attack action on these Centauris, it now buffs to 4, I leak a bit of damage, she's going to make a copper. But do I ever really care about the copper? Not really, it's just damage. So because that first Saber swing, there's no relevant hit effect really, I let it through. I want more information about what Tom's turn is going to be. Obviously that first swing had go again off the Quicken, so something else is coming. I want more knowledge before I decide blocks. And sure enough, now I see the full committal of his hand here. Well, he's got one more card in hand. I think it's an In the Swing. I don't quite remember. Yeah, there we go. In the Swing. Promo In the Swing. So he's coming in for 9 on this second Centauri, and it has Dominate because of the push forward, which is not like the biggest deal. I have a hand where I'm already considering keeping the 3 cards anyway. I've actually got a blue, thank goodness, double Boneyard, and a Razor. So this is kind of the perfect draw with cards like Razor in the deck, right? You want to see these one cost attacks to get good value out of the Razor Reflex curve. So pretty fortunate to see them line up in this capacity. Blocking down with one Boneyard here doesn't lose me any value in this play pattern, because now I'll still be able to play my first Boneyard, Razor it for go again into the Ghostly, and come in for a pretty decent turn. Once again, a 13 damage turn if it all goes through. So actually, to note, sorry, the one thing that does mess this up, I only have the 2 cards in graveyard. The Boneyard I blocked with this turn, and 1 card left over from last turn. So I only have the 2 cards. So actually, I do have to go in alternative order here. So this is where Tom could read that I have Razor Reflex. The other thing he could read here is that I just kind of got screwed by his Dominate, because in theory, right, maybe I wanted to block more, but because his second attack was Dominate, I just wasn't able to. And sometimes Levia just has these clunky, awful turns because of it. So he decides to not overblock or play safe on that Ghostly. So it does hit. It does now get go again. I go ahead, send it all to grave to now play that Boneyard. I'm hoping to hit Ghostly again, of course, just because once it's in graveyard, it is a handy toolbox card. But I've pushed the 13 damage turn I wanted. It's mildly above rate, right? You'd assume that on like a 4-card hand, you should, or actually, yeah, on a 4-card hand, you are wanting to push like around 12 damage minimum for it to be like average value. This was a 3-card hand that's pushing 13. So actually that's way above rate. And this is kind of why Levia shines, in my opinion. I love how grindy games can get with her when all of a sudden the value of her stats, the value of her trade pattern really start to shine. Sometimes in like a short aggro game, you don't really feel it as much. But when it does come up, when a 2-card hand presents 9, when a 3-card hand presents like 13, something like this, man, it's a great feeling. And we see Tom already under like so much pressure. He wants to keep these hands to swing back into me. I'm definitely low on life already myself, take down to 7. But I've still got my equipment up. I've got a Goliath Gauntlet. You can't really see it because the overlay, apologize. But I've got 2 block on my equipment at least. I'm gone through now all of Tom's equipment. He kept his 4-card hand, so he's definitely trying to present like at least lethal. Like he better present at least lethal, otherwise why did he keep it? And he just leads in with that first Blade, or with that first Centauri. And when Kassais do this, you have to remember that Blade Runner exists, because Blade Runner is a common, and it's one of Kassai's best cards anyway, so of course they're going to run it in probably the full rainbow. But what I do notice on this turn here is he pitched a red, so I don't think anything too powerful is going to come my way anyway, because now his turn is probably just Centauri, pitch, red, pitch red, Blade Runner, Centauri for free, Arsenal, which is like fine turn. I don't think it was really worth keeping that whole hand for, but on my end, I'm actually in a bit of a bind anyway. I had an all red hand myself, speaking of all red hands, but I did use Hope Merchants. I think I should have slowed down and thought about that one, because one of the cards I shuffled back in was a red Unworldly, and the red Unworldly was definitely worth keeping there, because it was a 2-card hand enabler if I drew at least even a yellow, because I'd have the Ghostly Visit, right? It would be a 2-card hand for 8, which is, good. That is a good rate. So I should have kept at least that card before using Hope Merchants. That was definitely a big misplay, and I'm getting punished for it, because when I drew up, yeah, I was digging for resources, but I drew up into 4 blues that don't really do anything. There's no way to turn off Blood Debt in that hand, and I am at 3 Blood Debt right now, so that's even a little bit relevant itself. And I now get to block a bit heavier. This hand wasn't that great anyway, so I'm protecting some life in that capacity. But I wanted to put pressure on Tom for sure. I mean, I should be able to present lethal when he's only at 5 off of a 2-card hand, but it's looking tight. It's not necessarily looking like I can. Now, we know I have that Razor Reflex in Arsenal, so I can try to just, cheese lethal here, because I do have a blue still. So if I swing in with Talishar, and I get the read that perhaps he's got nothing, like maybe he just doesn't block it, then I can Razor for game, perhaps. But when I do swing Talishar here, I get a bit of a sense that he's potentially sitting on a defense reaction, because he's acting a little weird. about blocks. Sometimes people change their language about like, no blocks, reactions, that kind of thing. So he's playing a bit funky with it. I do decide to go ahead and commit the Razor Reflex anyway, because why not? It's lethal if he doesn't have the defense reaction, but he did have the defense reaction, and it makes sense. It's Commoner. These Sinks, these Fates, they're commons, they're very high value. A deck like Kassai is definitely going to run them, so I think I was a bit too eager on the Razor, because putting him to 2 is, I mean, it's okay. It's not like I have Reckless Swing to really end the game or anything on that life threshold. And by committing the Razor there, I've now kind of shortened the lines that I'm going to have in the rest of this game. There's probably not going to be many more turns, but by using the Razor now, it was just raw damage, where if I held it, it was potentially raw damage, but adding the Go Again trigger. And that would have been a big deal. I mean, I know it's probably still correct anyway to just play it out, because it could have been lethal. But because of the way his body language was, I pretty much should have just held it and kept it. So, oh well, oh well. It's looking a little bit tight now as well, because my hand now is just hot trash, and I don't have that Hope Merchant's Hood to try to bail me out anymore. I have other tools to try to bail me out. I've got like the Bark Bone to give me resources, which is great. The Hooves to give me the action point, which is great. But this hand is just garbage, and I'm under threat of just dying as well into Tom here. So my hand is a Come to Fight, a Blue Dread Screamer, a Ghostly Visit, and an Awakening Bellow red. This is just no way to turn off Blood Debt, no 6s I can easily block with to fill grave. Very resource light as well, because, well, I do have a way to turn off Blood Debt. It's the Blue Dread Screamer. That's my resource card. So I'm already thinking, oh geez, if I want to survive at all, I need to not only block Tom here, but I need to rely on Barkbone to help me pay for this Dread Screamer, or I'm probably just dead. So here you can kind of see perhaps why Heart and Crossstrap is just better than the Barkbone here, because it's some dependability. Right now I'm having to take a chance. But in thinking of blocks here, I'm always going to have to block that first swing, because if I just say no blocks and then Tom has a attack reaction, I would just lose outright. So since I know I'm going to have to protect my life total to not die, it's correct to go ahead and block that first one. Even if he buffs it by 3, I'm not dead. That second Saber would come in for 2. I have 2 equipment pieces. That would block it. I'll survive most likely at 1 at the end of this turn. But he didn't have the attack reaction, or at least he didn't play one. I still think, isn't his arsenal like in the swing or something? Maybe I lost track. But I probably could have been at 1 here if he played out that card. And me at 1 does mean something. It means I would die to Blood Debt. But on my turn, I've got to pray a bit, and Levia treated me nice right here. Very nice. I rolled a 6 on that Barkbone strapping, which gives me all the resources I need to actually turn this, kind of measly turn in potentially the last turn of the game, the game ender. So the other thing that needs to go right now is I need to, banish a 6, and I only have 2 in this entire graveyard. And odds there. I'm not a math guy, but it's like okay that I hit them. I actually automatically do hit 1, but then I actually hit both. So what this tells me now is I have no more 6s in this graveyard at all. None of the plays I'm going to make this turn are going to leave my graveyard with any 6s, and I'm probably going to take Tom's whole hand if I don't just kill him here, which means I won't be able to block with a 6. So this is probably my last turn. In my head, I think I just lose here. Even though I got lucky with the Barkbone, I am just not in a spot where my graveyard looks good at all. Everything's kind of falling apart. But I have, the one opportunity here to really punish if he doesn't have a defense reaction in his hand, and that is to come in for a total of 12 damage across like weird breakpoints, right? So this first Dread Screamer, I do decide to crack the hooves on it. It's going to give me the extra action point. Then the Dread Screamer itself has Go Again. So it gives me the 2 extra action points to make sure I can swing now the Ghostly Visit that is in Banished, and then at least the Talishar, that's an extra 4, or if I want, I can play the other Ghostly Visit that's in hand. But that's 12 damage now across only 3 attacks, so I'm forcing Tom now to have the defense reaction, or he just loses, because he's going to leak a damage on a couple of these attacks. And sure enough, just do you have it, do you not? I've seen 1 Fate gone. I don't know if he runs the Sinks, but he just didn't have it in this aspect, and a kind of unlucky situation turned into a lucky one, and game just ended. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. I'm headed to Pittsburgh in a bit, and catch you in the next video.